This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, we want to begin this half hour in the Middle East. The IDF admitted to residents of Kibbutz Be'eri that it failed to protect them on October 7th and commended the community security team for its quick action in preventing the invasion from spreading even further. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl is on this story.
The Israeli military released a report on its own conduct and failures at Kibbutz Be'eri on October 7th, including a diagram of the battle.
That day, the IDF failed in its mission to protect the citizens of Israel.
Be'eri was one of the communities hardest hit by Hamas, with more than 100 Israelis slaughtered and more than 30 hostages taken that day, including 11 still in captivity.
We were not prepared for the murderous terrorist attack by Hamas, involving thousands of terrorists who infiltrated the country at dozens of points at the same time and began a campaign of killing, slaughter, and kidnapping in the southern settlements and IDF outposts.
Terrorists killed Meir Zerbiv's brother and sister. He's furious with the IDF for not quickly charging into the kibbutz to stop the slaughter.
The terrorists broke into the kibbutz at 6:30 in the morning, and around, I think, 10 to 10:30, forces arrived at the entrance of the kibbutz, and they were asked to enter. They didn't want to enter. They said they weren't given the order to enter.
Israel's prime minister has rejected an official probe into October 7th while a war is going on. But this week, his own defense minister called for just such an investigation.
We require a probe at the national level, a probe that will clarify the facts. It needs to check me, Minister of Defense. It needs to check the Prime Minister.
As for the war in Gaza, the Washington Post reports both Hamas and Israel have agreed to the broad outline of a hostage release and ceasefire deal. But many details still need to be worked out. At a news conference, Joe Biden revealed he and American negotiators are heavily involved.
I'm determined to get this deal done and bring an end to this war, which should end now.
Biden also criticized the Israeli war cabinet as too conservative and repeated his stance that the only way to a lasting peace is by creating a Palestinian state, something Netanyahu and the majority of the Israeli people are against.
And Chris Mitchell joins us now with more. So, Chris, what impact or possible impact would a resignation of Joe Biden have on Israel and the Middle East?
Well, Ephraim, I know a lot of people are watching that in the U.S., and they're watching it here in the possible resignation of President Biden here in Israel and the Middle East. I would say that the enemies and allies are watching. I think it actually emboldens Israel's enemies like Iran, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. The whole idea of strength here in the Middle East is a big deal, Ephraim. It really matters, and even perception of whether someone is weak or not. And all of this is why many people believe here in Israel that they need to win the war in Gaza against Hamas and then likely a war with Hezbollah. Globally, many here in the region are looking at a more aggressive China and Russia because of a weakened president and, a shaky political landscape. In America, I would say a lot of people over here, Ephraim, are saying a great time to pray for America and Israel and the peace of Jerusalem.
And you are back now in Jerusalem after reporting in the north for some time. What are your reactions and reflections after meeting with many people there?
Well, it's a very, very tough situation for the families and the people we talked to. Many have been out of their homes for 9 months now, and it's very difficult on their families. Some of the people have moved 4 or 5 times. But overall, I would say really struck by the resilience of many of the people we talked to. These people have deep roots. One example, Miriam, a lady we talked to, she's a 5th-generation resident of Metula, which is right on the furthest part north in Israel, right on the Lebanese border. She's not going. She wants to go back. I talked to a Thai, and his grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and a promise he made to him that he would stand and stay in Israel. Itamar, he's a forester on the Golan Heights, and he's looking at all the thousands of acres that have been burned, but he says his generation will rebuild and replant. I know Hezbollah may think they will drive Israelis off of the land through this war of attrition. But from what I've heard, Ephraim, and the people I talk to, it's not going to work.
What are you hearing about possible major escalation between Hezbollah and Israel?
There's a variety of opinions, Ephraim, and rumors. First of all, that it could happen any day and likely in the summer, maybe in a few weeks. The idea is that when the war in Gaza winds down sufficiently, then the war in the north is going to begin. Another thought we've heard is that it could be next spring. And why? Because it's a better time to fight a war than winter. And so if you start a war now that will last for months, it's going to run into the winter. So the idea is that better to start in the spring. People also want to see what happens with the U.S. elections and which way the U.S. is going to go. Also, the Iron Beam, which is a laser policy that could come online. That could be another game changer. And then there's a thought that the ceasefire with Hamas, then Hezbollah will stop, and that Hezbollah is great enough for residents to go back. But it's really not clear, I think, for a number of the thousands of residents to return to their homes and livelihoods unless they realize Hezbollah is no longer a threat.
Real quick, what's ahead on Jerusalem Dateline today?
Well, we have an update on the war. We have a story with Pulse of Israel, Avi Abelo. He gives us a look behind the headlines. We also talked to the Tikva Forum. Their idea is that they want to win the war before striking a deal to release the hostages and probably end the war prematurely. And also a story about Israeli cowboys on the Golan Heights fighting fires right now.
All right, Chris Mitchell reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you so much. Know that we desire for you to stay safe and are continuing to pray for you and our entire team there. Want to remind you at home, you can get the latest edition of Jerusalem Dateline this evening on the CBN News Channel. It begins at 8 Eastern. You can also watch it on the CBN News app, or you can find it on YouTube. Here at home in the U.S., President Biden remains determined to stay in the race. In a high-stakes news conference last night, he brushed aside questions about his health and declared he intends to finish the job he started. The president's performance was far from reassuring. Just minutes after he walked off stage, more Democrats publicly called for him to step aside. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener has more details.
President Biden faced nearly an hour of questions, pushing back on suggestions he is slowing down or not up for the job. Now the question is whether his performance was good enough to regain his party's confidence and the voters.
I'm determined on running, but I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there.
The news conference was meant to reassure Democratic lawmakers, supporters, and voters that he has the strength and stamina to be commander-in-chief. But he stumbled on the first question when pressed on whether Vice President Kamala Harris could beat Donald Trump in November.
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
To which Trump responded on social media, "Great job, Joe." Biden also laughed off an earlier mistake Thursday when he called Ukrainian President Zelensky President Putin.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. You can beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
He dismissed concerns about his health and the need to take a neurological test, saying he should be judged on his performance.
Best way to assure them is the way I assure myself. And that is, am I getting the job done? Am I getting the job done?
While the president claims he has the overwhelming support of Democratic voters, a new poll shows a staggering 85% think he's too old for another term, with more than half wanting him to drop out of the race. So do at least 17 Democrats and counting, publicly calling on him to step aside. Eric Sorensen of Illinois and Jim Himes of Connecticut urged the president to end his candidacy minutes after the news conference. Earlier on Capitol Hill Thursday, the Biden campaign made its case for why the president should stay in the race.
Can we honestly say that we're on a path to defeating Donald Trump?
There are reports the campaign is testing head-to-head matchups between Harris and Trump in polling. The ABC Washington Post Ipsos poll shows Biden still neck and neck with Trump, 46 to 47%. Today, the president heads to Michigan, his fourth trip to the battleground state this year. Tara Mergener, CBN News.
President Biden trailing President Trump among religious voters and not just evangelicals. See how a new faith-based movement may be in the making. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. We'll be right back. President Biden has made it clear he intends to stay in the presidential race. One potential challenge for the president is winning religious voters. Polls show he's trailing Donald Trump, and not only among evangelicals. CBN's Tara Mergener joins us once again with this story.
Since America's early days, religion has influenced presidential elections. Major moments have ranged from John F. Kennedy becoming the first Catholic president to the moral majority and Christian coalition. As the 2024 campaign enters its final phase, we're possibly seeing a new faith-based moment in the making.
We have to defend religious liberty, free speech, innocent life.
This election, Donald Trump's support is not limited to evangelical Christians.
The 45th and soon to be the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
It's growing across the spectrum of religious voters, not necessarily because they like the former president, but because of his conservative policies.
If President Trump was right here, I would let him know that sometimes your comments, they irritate all of us at one time or another. But in the end, it's not the way he does that. It's really what he says and or in how he carries that out.
If Joe Biden gets back in, Christianity will not be safe in a nation with no borders, no laws, no freedom, no future.
It's no secret there's a major divide among voters on the role religion should play in the country. Trump supporters are more likely to embrace support for a greater religious influence, while Biden supporters are less likely to hold these views.
This is likely to be a very close election, and everyone is going to matter, particularly voters of faith.
I don't think this court and the MAGA Republicans have any clue about the power of women in America.
Political observers say the key reason for a significant drop in support from the Catholic community is Biden's stance on abortion.
Joe Biden, despite being a quite flamboyant and explicit Catholic who carries a rosary around with him, nevertheless is very staunchly pro-abortion.
Find me one Latina who believes it is morally acceptable to abort a baby in the 8th month or the 9th month. Just find me one Latina. You won't.
In an April poll from Pew Research, Trump leads Biden among Catholics 55% to 43%. This 12-point spread partly attributed to increasing support from Hispanic Catholics, a significant shift from 2020 when Trump won Catholics by just 1%. There are other Biden administration policies on religious freedom and LGBTQ rights raising concerns among those who support traditional family values.
My message to transgender Americans, I have your back.
Critics also argue the Biden administration is attacking religious liberty.
The FBI coming after individuals that were protesting abortion. We've never seen that before. We have seen the intrusion of the Biden administration with Grand Canyon University coming after the largest evangelical school in the nation. So these are just manifestations of why is the Biden administration so hostile to the Judeo-Christian value system and to people of faith.
In Marquette Law School's survey, Biden trails Trump by 16 points among mainline Protestant denominations, including Methodists, Presbyterians, and Episcopalians.
President Trump has been the biggest champion for the Jewish people in the state of Israel, and the Jewish vote in Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, here in New York is going to put him over the top.
Although Biden still leads among Jewish voters, an American Jewish Committee survey shows his support down by 14% since 2020, believed to be due to his wavering stance on Israel during its war with Hamas and response to anti-Semitism in the U.S. In the Muslim community, which typically votes Democrat, support is also declining over Biden's policies regarding the war in Gaza. A May survey shows Trump leading among registered Middle Eastern, North African, or Muslim voters in battleground states. More than half say they are planning to back him in November.
We will not support those who support genocide.
Ahead of November, analysts say the Biden campaign faces the challenge of bridging his divide with the devout.
The movement of those voters by 5 or 10%, of course, are to make a presidential election decisive.
I'm skeptical that there's something that President Biden can do or say that will dramatically impact the trajectory of this race.
As President Biden faces increased pressure from within the party to drop out of the race, his need for religious voters right now might depend more on their prayers than their ballots. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Still ahead, singer and songwriter Kim Walker-Smith is talking about her newest project. It's called Trample. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. Welcome back to CBN News Watch. Singer and songwriter Kim Walker-Smith just wrapped the international leg of her tour in South Africa, and she's bringing the music home with a tour in the States. It'll start this fall. The tour is sure to include new music from her first album in 3 years. It's called Trample.
Same power that rolls back rocks from a dead man's cave.
So this is your first new album in 3 years.
Yes.
So have you been working all those 3 years on this album, or when did the process begin?
Well, you know, I like to have bigger gaps in between albums because I always say I need to live a little life and have something to say and contribute. I don't want to just write songs just for the sake of writing songs, but I want to feel like there's a depth to my writing and I have something that feels really meaningful. In that process, kind of working through what felt like a little bit of a wilderness to me, I came out on the other side and felt like, okay, I'm ready, and I feel like I have something to say and to contribute to people, and that's when the album began.
Now, the title track from the project is called Trample. Tell me the scripture inspiration, what inspired it?
It's the only song on the record that I did not write. I have some really great songwriting friends who often will come together. They know me so well. We've known each other for years. We've written for years together. And they wrote this song with me in mind. I loved the song immediately. The song is coming from the verse Luke 10:19, and it says, I'm just going to read it here. Behold, I give you the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you.
By the power of the blood, I belong to you.
And the song meant so much more to me in this season because as we made a big move and transition in our family, I was really stepping out to trust God, but feeling a lot of fear. And I needed that constant reminder of what the work of the cross was not just for the forgiveness of sins, but so that I could walk in the authority that He has given us and the fullness of life.
So what's been the response so far?
It has been a really great response. I think for all of the kind of longtime people who have known me for all the years I've been doing music and followed me in my journey and all the songs, the response has kind of been, wow, this is something very fresh and new. It's very different for Kim, but it's not a departure of who I am.
I love it. So if you had a prayer for this particular project that's out now, what's that prayer?
Always my prayer is that it speaks to people, it encourages people. I hope that these are prophetic declarations in people's lives that can even help launch them into a deeper connection to Jesus and launch them into the next thing and into freedom.
Kim Walker-Smith's latest album, again, is called Trample. It's available wherever you stream, download, or purchase your music. You can find her on tour at a city near you coming this fall. Coming up, a special look at some new arrivals at the San Diego Zoo. Plus, we've got your Friday Faithful. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. Welcome back to CBN News Watch. We're getting a look at the first pandas to enter the United States in more than 2 decades. The San Diego Zoo recently welcomed a pair of giant pandas from China, the first of the species to come stateside in 21 years. The pair is receiving fresh bamboo to help them acclimate to their new environment, and vets from both China and the U.S. are monitoring their transition. The pandas are off limits to the public for now, but the zoo says you will be able to visit and see them soon. It's time now for your Friday Faithful, and today I want to leave you with this thought. Don't give up when you reach the end of your rope. There is where you'll find the hand of God. He is not distant in your time of trouble. He is a very present help in your time of trouble. Even if you can't find his hand, trust his heart with that word. Make this a fine Friday and have yourself a wonderfully rest-filled weekend. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. Take a moment. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and X. We'd love to hear from you. Hope you'll join us again right back here come Monday. Goodbye and God bless.